So it has been a couple of days since people have gotten their hands on the Nintendo Switch 2, and of course, there are lots of videos and articles being written about the Switch 2 as a system. Now, I'm not here to tell people how they should feel about something. If you like something, you like it. If you dislike something, you dislike it. I think that's a very valid thing to take into consideration when talking about things, but I kind of more so want to focus on something I've been seeing with kind of a wave of recent Nintendo Switch 2 related videos and what the reasons are that people don't like them, because there seems to be two things that keep popping up in a lot of these Nintendo Switch 2 reviews that people seem to be harking on. And one of the things I can understand, I can definitely see where people are coming from. But the other thing I find really, really bizarre, and I don't understand it. So I kind of want to explore it in this video today, talking about the reason why people don't like the Nintendo Switch 2. If this is your first time on the channel, hit that subscribe button. Now, I am not a Nintendo apologist. I have been very vocal and very critical about certain aspects of the system, certain aspects of how the system works, certain aspects about how the games are manufactured onto the Nintendo Switch. And this is kind of one of the first reasons that I've been seeing for people saying that they're not a big fan of the system, and it's definitely something I can understand, and that gets involved with the game key cards. Because if you really think about it, it was kind of a weird decision for Nintendo to do this. Now, as you are well aware, or maybe not aware, on the Nintendo Switch 1, there were multiple cartridge sizes that developers had access to. Everything from like a 2 gig cartridge to a 32 gigabyte cartridge. So depending on the size of your game, you could put it all on the cartridge, you could put a portion of it on the cartridge, but a vast majority of Switch 1 games were indeed on the cartridge, meaning that if you bought a physical version of the game, you indeed got a physical version of that game and didn't have to require any sort of additional download. Now, there were some games, some larger games, especially third-party ones, that did require a digital download, but it was definitely more so the norm for a physical Switch 1 game to actually be a physical game. On the Nintendo Switch 2, though, instead of having multiple different cartridge sizes, Nintendo seems to only have a 64 gigabyte cartridge size, which is really problematic for two different reasons. One, if your game is super small, like a 4 or 8 or even a 12 gigabyte game, you're essentially having to pay more for this 64 gigabyte cartridge, and this game is probably going to be sold at a discount anyways, probably $40 or $50. So you would have to raise the price of that game to justify using the 64 gigabyte cartridge, which costs more money, and then people wouldn't buy the game. A game like Puyo Puyo Tetris 2S, nobody's paying $70 for that game, or even $60, but the file size of it is so small that it doesn't make sense for it to be on the cartridge to buy that cartridge, so you have to subsidize it with the game key cards, which are essentially something you pop into your Nintendo Switch 2 that looks exactly like a cartridge, but then just downloads the game onto your system, requiring an internet connection. And on the flip side of that, a lot of third-party games are larger than 64 gigabytes. Cyberpunk 2077 was compressed down to 64 gigabytes to fit on the Nintendo Switch 2 cartridge, but really that's kind of an anomaly. Most of these third-party games are a bit larger, especially games like Street Fighter and whatnot. So of course Capcom is going to do something like a 64 gigabyte cartridge where they would have to compress things more, because it's really additional work for them. When you don't have to worry about stuff like that on other platforms, because Blu-rays hold up to 100 gigabytes, it could be very problematic. So then of course they are going to use the game key cards. And this really causes the effect of, you know, there's not a lot of true physical games on the Nintendo Switch 2, and that brings in a whole debate point. And I understand that mentality. I understand that if you are a physical collector, it could be very disheartening to see a vast majority of the games on the system not being true physical editions, and it's not going to get better anytime soon. Companies are not going to just be like, oh, we need to make our games physically. Like, yes, some people are willing to pay more for a physical version of the game. I get it. I see those YouTube comments all the time. But you're not the average consumer. The average consumer does not want to do that. The average consumer does not care about the physical media. That's why DVDs and Blu-rays left, Best Buy. That's why things like CDs completely phased out, because people want convenience and people want it as cheap as possible and as convenient as possible. Now, that doesn't mean that there won't be some physical edition games for Switch 2 third-party ports, and they probably will be lauded online and people will be very excited for them, and there will be a small group of dedicated fans that will buy these games. But the lack of true physical games for most games on the Nintendo Switch 2 is a problem, and I completely agree with it. And if you are someone who is a diehard physical fan, I mean, modern gaming is just quickly becoming not for you. Think of all the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series games that have these same sorts of issues, to where you have to download a vast majority of the game, and the disc is kind of just like a key in order to do it. Look at Indiana Jones on the PlayStation 5. So I completely understand that sentiment. I understand that. It's not the biggest deal in the world to me. I don't mind the game key cards. You can sell the game key cards, which you can't do with a digital version of a game on any system that you have right now. So at least there is a benefit to that, but it's definitely not ideal. What could Nintendo have done? They could have offered more cartridge sizes. They could have done a different physical medium, but I'm not Nintendo, so I don't really, know the proper answer to that, but it would have been nice if there was kind of another way. So I understand that reason. I can get behind that reason. I can see the concern with that reason. But this other reason, bro, this is where these people lose me. And this is no disrespect to anyone. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone likes what they like. They dislike what they dislike. They want what they want. They get what they can get. But I do not understand this whatsoever. And this is something that's popping up more and more online. The Switch 2 isn't really a successor. It's just a better Switch, so it's kind of like a Switch Pro. And that's a negative. What the hell logic is this? What is this? That is what you want from a successful console. That is what you want. You want to have if something works, you don't go back and reinvent the wheel just because you're bored. I mean, look at PlayStation and look at Xbox. Yes, they added in features to these systems, but at their core, they're just better versions of the previous systems. And for decades, that has been the standard. Nintendo was kind of the weird kid, and they would kind of go their own different path and do things their own different way. And sometimes it worked, and sometimes it didn't work. Worked decently on the Wii, not so much on the Wii U. The Switch was a huge success, arguably one of the highest selling console of all time when it's all said and done. So why would you want them to reinvent the wheel with this? Wouldn't you want Switch 1 games to perform better on the Switch 2, and then Switch 2 games are not held back by technical limitations that Switch 1 games were held back by? Like, look at a game like Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild that, of course, got these updates that are now running at like 4K 60 with HDR. This is what we dreamed about when these games originally released. We were like, wow, man, I really wish I could play this game with all the bells and whistles. And now you can. A game like Mario Kart World looks absolutely gorgeous on a 4K 120 Hz HDR capable monitor. And it's like, wow, this looks great. I can't wait to play a third party or a third person platformer from Nintendo on this system, because it's going to look crazy good. And you have things like modern quality of life improvements. It is kind of essentially a Switch Pro, but that's a good thing. What the hell would you want them to do? Do you not like the hybrid concept? Do you not like being able to take the system on the go? Because honestly, that is a selling point of the system for a lot of people. If you wanted to make just a dedicated home console, then you're right back into the war with PlayStation, trying to go head to head in terms of technical specifications, and you can't really do that right now. It really wouldn't make that much sense, because it seems like Xbox is starting to phase out of that market. Now, of course, Nintendo software sells really well, but you're losing the unique aspect that you had in the last generation. Plus, they added in stuff with this. Nobody seems to be talking about things like game chat and the mouse control. Game chat works amazingly, like stupidly good. I was literally laying in bed, playing my Switch in handheld mode before I wanted to go to bed, and John sent a call out to Spawnwave, sent a call to me and MBG. I got on the thing, I hit the little C button, I joined the chat. I don't need a headset. I don't need a microphone, and everything is crystal clear. I don't hear any background noise, and it was absolutely perfect. And I'm like, this is such a nice feature. This seems like something Nintendo would have completely butchered, but instead it works very, very well. The mouse controls are a huge game changer. You just turn your Switch Joy-Con to the side, and then boom, you got a mouse. And it's like, these are what other companies do. They take what was successful, they take what was appreciated from the system, continue with it, and then add in new innovations. Everyone complained that Switch 1 games looked and ran bad sometimes. And that, you know, oh man, I wish this game was 1080p 60. I wish this game was 4K. I wish this game was 1080p 120 hertz. And now you're getting the chance to get these Nintendo first-party games and other third-party games that either didn't make sense or couldn't be done on the Switch 1 on this new system. But now the system is boring. Now the Switch Pro is a bad thing. We don't want to play games that look and run better. Like, what do you expect? What do you want? I fully do not understand it. This is what I wanted from the Switch since like 2021 or 2020, I should say. You know, 2019, hell, pandemic years. Like, I wanted a beefier Switch. Keep the same ideas, keep the same core concepts, make it better, make the eShop run better. Let me talk to people on the system. Maybe give me some new control schemes, but give me better looking and better running games on the system. Let it be so that third-party companies can actually make full renditions of their games that look and run great on this hardware. Make it a bit beefier so that we can enjoy a lot of modern games on this one device. And if it's a multiplayer game, I could stomp out a bunch of little kids playing on the Nintendo console. And that's what they did. But what did other people want? Like, I don't get it. I do not get it. What was the huge thing from PlayStation 4 to PlayStation 5? Ray tracing? PlayStation 3 to PlayStation 4, better graphics. PlayStation 2 to PlayStation 3, HD graphics. Xbox to Xbox 360, HD graphics, better looking games. Like, that's how consoles and video game things work. I know Nintendo is kind of the weird, quirky kid sometimes, but sometimes you got to reel it in a little bit and be like, yo, this is probably going to be the best-selling system of all time. We should probably play it kind of safe with this and just, you know, make it better, add in more features, and then make everything look and run better. And that's what they did. But people think it sucks because that's what all they did. I don't get it. I do not get it. You want to be upset about game key cards? Fine. Go on, Playboy. I understand that. I understand there's going to be a lot of people that don't like them, and I can understand the reasoning why. But complaining about this being a better Switch and games looking and running better and that being like the main feature and saying that's a bad thing? No, I can't get behind that, partner. I can't get behind that. But maybe you can, and I mean, it's all opinion-based at the end of the day. So let me know in the comment section down below. What do you think? You know, is this good enough for you? Did you want more? Did you want something wild and crazy? And if so, what would it be? That is what I want to know. You want a VR headset? Because VR is really taking off. Like, what the hell do you want? I don't know. It's kind of crazy to me. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to check out other videos on the channel. If you didn't enjoy it, be sure to check out other videos on the channel. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.